When my sister laughed and said no man wants a single mom like you, I just smiled, took a sip of my drink, and said nothing. But when her fiancé stood up, the whole room went silent, and that silence told me everything I needed to know. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let me know where you're listening from in the comments. My name is Ellie, I'm 29 years old, and I've been a single mom for the past 4 years. My son, Mason, is the light of my life, the reason I get up every morning, the reason I fight so hard to build a future that no one thought I could have. But to my family, being a single mom isn't something to be proud of, it's a scarlet letter. My younger sister, Ava, has always been the golden child, the kind of woman who could walk into a room and have every head turn. She's charming, beautiful, and very good at making people feel small without ever raising her voice. I used to think she just didn't know better, that she didn't realize how her words cut. But that night, at her 27th birthday dinner, I realized she knew exactly what she was doing. The dinner was held at one of those trendy rooftop restaurants, dim lights, live music, too expensive for what they actually serve. I was sitting at the far end of the table, next to Ava's fiancé, Daniel. He was polite, quiet, almost too polite for this crowd. My parents were in their element, laughing, drinking, showing off Ava like she was some prize they'd raised all on their own. I tried to enjoy the night. Really, I did. I even brought a small gift for Ava, a delicate silver bracelet I'd saved up for, because despite everything, she was still my sister. But things took a turn when one of her friends asked, "So, Ellie, are you dating anyone these days?" I laughed awkwardly, shaking my head. "No, just focusing on work and Mason right now." That should have been it. But Ava smirked. "Of course you are. I mean, no man wants to take on a single mom, right? That's just too much baggage." The table erupted in laughter. My dad chuckled. Even my mom hid her grin behind her glass. Someone muttered, "She's not wrong," and the laughter grew louder. And there I sat smiling, pretending like it didn't sting. Pretending like I hadn't spent nights crying because of that same thought, afraid I'd never be seen as anything more than a mistake someone made once and left behind. But then I noticed something. Daniel wasn't laughing. He was staring at Ava, his expression unreadable. When Ava noticed his silence, she leaned over and said playfully, "Oh come on, it's a joke." Daniel didn't respond. He just looked at me and said softly, "You don't deserve that." The table went quiet for half a second, then someone changed the subject. But that moment, that tiny flicker of truth stayed with me all night. After dessert, Ava got up to take pictures with her friends. I took it as my cue to leave. I told her happy birthday again, gave her the bracelet, and she hugged me briefly, distracted, her eyes already elsewhere. I walked toward the elevator, relieved to be escaping. But then I heard footsteps behind me. "Ellie, wait." It was Daniel. He looked uncomfortable, like he wasn't sure what he wanted to say. "I just wanted to apologize," he said. "Ava shouldn't have said that. She can be insensitive sometimes." I smiled weakly. "It's fine. I'm used to it." He shook his head. "No, it's not fine. You've been through a lot, and honestly, you handle it with more grace than most people I know." I didn't know how to respond to that. Compliments weren't something I heard often, especially from someone like him. He had this calm energy, the kind that made you feel seen. Before I could say anything, Ava appeared, her heels clicking against the marble floor. Her smile was sweet but sharp. "There you are," she said, looping her arm through his. "Ready to go?" Daniel nodded quickly, the moment gone. I smiled politely, said goodbye, and watched them leave together, perfect on the outside, like they were carved out of the same piece of glossy marble. I drove home that night, replaying everything in my head. The laughter, the looks, the humiliation that burned beneath my skin, but mostly Daniel's voice. "You don't deserve that." When I got home, Mason was asleep. I sat by his bed and watched him breathe for a long time. There's something about seeing your child safe and peaceful that makes the world's cruelty feel almost manageable. I told myself that I didn't need validation, that I didn't care what my family thought. But deep down, a part of me wondered if they'd ever see me as anything more than the woman who messed up. A few days later, my mom called. Not to check on me, of course, but to brag. "You should have seen Ava," she said. "Daniel took her shopping for her engagement party outfit. He's such a catch. You'll find someone like that someday, honey." Maybe. I bit my tongue. The old Ellie would have tried to defend herself, to remind her that I was doing well at work, that Mason was thriving, that I wasn't the failure they made me out to be. But I'd learned something powerful over the years: silence unnerves people more than words ever could. So I just said that's great, Mom, and ended the call. But that night, I couldn't stop thinking about the way Daniel had looked at me. Not in a romantic way, but in a human way. Like he saw me, really saw me. And something deep inside me whispered that this wasn't the last time our paths would cross. I didn't know how or when, but I could feel it, something was shifting. And the next time Ava tried to humiliate me, she wouldn't be the one holding all the power. Not anymore. I didn't see Daniel again for almost a month after Ava's birthday dinner. By then, I'd buried myself in work, late nights, extra shifts, anything to keep my mind off the humiliation I'd felt that night. I worked as a marketing consultant for a mid-sized tech company, juggling clients while making sure Mason got to school and back. It wasn't easy, but it was mine, my life, my independence. One Monday morning, my boss called me into her office. "Ellie, I've got a new client for you," she said, scanning her emails. "It's a big one, a partnership project between our firm and a new investor group. You'll be working directly with one of their executives." "Okay," I said, jotting down notes. "Who's the contact?" She smiled. "Daniel Brooks. I think you two will work well together." For a second I thought I'd misheard. "Daniel? Ava's Daniel?" My stomach flipped. "Is something wrong?" my boss asked, noticing my expression. "No," I said quickly. "Nothing at all." When I walked out of her office, I had to take a deep breath to steady myself. Of all the people in the city, it had to be him. Later that afternoon, I logged into the virtual meeting room for the project kickoff. My camera flickered on, and there he was, Daniel, in a crisp shirt, that calm, serious expression I remembered from the restaurant. His eyes widened when he saw me. "Ellie," he said, a small smile forming. "This is unexpected." "You could say that," I replied, trying to sound professional. He chuckled softly. "Well, I guess it's a small world." The meeting went smoothly. Daniel was focused, respectful, even kind. There was no trace of the arrogance that usually ran in Ava's circle. When the call ended, he lingered for a moment. "Hey, if it's not too weird, maybe we could grab coffee sometime. Just to catch up as colleagues, of course." I hesitated. "Sure. As colleagues." A few days later, we met at a cozy cafe downtown. He arrived early, holding 2 cups of coffee, one black, one with oat milk. "I wasn't sure what you liked, so I guessed," he said sheepishly. "It was oat milk." He remembered. We talked for over an hour. He asked about Mason, about my job, about my dreams. No one ever asked me those things. When I told him how I'd started from nothing after leaving Mason's father, he listened, not with pity, but with genuine respect. At one point, I asked about the engagement. His smile faltered. "Yeah, about that. It's been complicated." "Complicated how?" He sighed, looking down. "Ava's different when people aren't around. There's a side of her most don't see." I didn't push further. I just nodded, understanding more than I let on. When I got home that night, I couldn't stop thinking about the way he'd said it, different when people aren't around. It was the same tone I used years ago when making excuses for Mason's father. I recognized that exhaustion, that quiet acceptance of being drained by someone who should have been your peace. Over the next few weeks, Daniel and I worked closely on the campaign. We talked every day, sometimes about work, sometimes not. He'd ask how Mason was doing in school, and I'd ask how wedding planning was going, though he'd always dodge that question with a vague fine. Then one Friday evening, he called unexpectedly. "Ellie, can you talk?" "Yeah, what's up?" There was a long pause. "Ava saw us having coffee last week," he said finally. My stomach dropped. "Oh no." "She didn't take it well," he continued. "She thinks there's something going on between us." "What?" "That's ridiculous, I know. But she won't listen. She accused me of choosing you over her." I was speechless. Typical Ava, dramatic, insecure, always twisting the story to make herself the victim. "Daniel, I'm so sorry," I said quietly. "I never meant to cause problems." He sighed. "You didn't." Honestly, this was just the excuse she needed. "Things have been falling apart for a while. I think she's been seeing someone else." That last line hit me harder than I expected. Not because I felt bad for Ava, but because I realized Daniel had finally seen her for who she was. 2 days later, my mom called. Her voice was sharp. "Ellie, what did you do?" "Excuse me." Ava called me crying. "She said you're trying to steal her fiancé." I almost laughed. "That's absurd, Mom. We're working on a project together." "She said you're meeting him behind her back, flirting." "Mom, stop," I said firmly. "Nothing like that happened. Maybe you should ask her why she's so insecure instead of assuming the worst about me." There was silence on the line. My mom wasn't used to me talking back. Well, you've always been jealous of her. It's not hard to see why. That one cut deep, but I didn't let it show. Good night, Mom, I said and hung up. That night, I sat on my couch, Mason asleep beside me, wondering how my own family could so easily turn me into the villain. But then I remembered something Daniel said earlier that day. You can't change how they see you, he'd told me. But you can change the story they tell about you by living better than their lies. That stuck with me. By Monday, everything changed. Ava's engagement was officially off. Daniel sent me a message that morning, it's over. She confessed to seeing someone else. I feel free, honestly. I didn't know what to say, so I sent a simple "I'm sorry you had to go through that." But what I really wanted to say was "I told you so." That week, word spread fast through my family. My parents were furious, blaming Daniel for humiliating Ava, blaming me for ruining the relationship. No one asked if I was okay, or how I felt being dragged into the mess. But I didn't need their approval anymore. For once, I had peace. Then one evening, as I was cleaning up after dinner, my phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. "Ellie, I have something to tell you. It's about your family and you're not going to believe it." My heart skipped. I stared at the screen, not knowing whether to reply or brace myself for what was coming next. Because if there's one thing I'd learned, it's that with my family, especially Ava, nothing was ever over that easily. When I read Daniel's message, "I have something to tell you about your family," my stomach tightened. I didn't know what to expect, but the tone in his text was different. Firm. Final. He asked to meet in person. So, the next afternoon, I found myself sitting across from him at a quiet cafe. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept in days. "Ellie," he began, his voice low, "I didn't want to involve you in this, but you deserve to know what's been going on." I nodded slowly, gripping my coffee cup. "Go on." He took a deep breath. "After Ava and I split, I started digging into some things. The prenup her family wanted me to sign? It wasn't about protecting her. It was about protecting your parents' money. Turns out, they'd been using Ava's name for years to hide investments, the house, the business accounts, everything. Your name? Nowhere. They cut you out completely." I blinked, stunned. "Wait, what?" He nodded. "And the funny thing is, your sister's boyfriend, the one she cheated on me with, was part of it too. He's been helping your father move funds out of the company he co-owns with your mom. It's messy and honestly, possibly illegal." For a few seconds, all I could do was stare at him. The air between us was heavy, like the moment before a thunderstorm breaks. "You're telling me," I finally said, "that while my sister and parents were mocking me for being a single mom, they were stealing in plain sight," Daniel said. "And now that Ava's engagement fell apart, your father's in trouble. His partner found out about the hidden funds. There's talk of lawsuits." I leaned back, letting it sink in. My parents, the people who'd looked down on me for years, who made me feel small, ashamed, and unworthy, had built their life on lies. For the first time, I didn't feel powerless. I felt calm, clear. "What are you going to do?" Daniel asked gently. I smiled faintly. "I'm not sure yet. But maybe it's time they finally see the value in what they've been dismissing all along." That night, I didn't sleep much. Instead, I wrote letters, notes, ideas. I went through old messages, photos, and memories. Not out of anger, but to remember every moment they'd made me feel less than human. By the next morning, I knew what I had to do. 2 weeks later, my parents called to invite me to a family dinner. It was the first time they'd reached out since the engagement fiasco, and I could practically hear the tension in my mother's voice. "We just want to clear the air, Ellie. Family is important, you know." I almost laughed. Family, the same one that had laughed at me, humiliated me, erased me from their lives. But I agreed to go. When I arrived, Ava was already there, sitting stiffly beside my father. She looked pale, nervous, a far cry from the confident sister who'd once mocked me in front of a crowd. My father spoke first. "Ellie, we've had some misunderstandings. But you're still our daughter. We'd like to move past all this drama." "Misunderstandings?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Is that what you call mocking me in front of a room full of people? Or cutting me out of your business entirely?" My mother's face went red. "That's not true. Daniel told me everything," I said calmly, cutting her off. "About the investments, the shell accounts, and Ava's involvement. Don't bother denying it." My father's jaw tightened. "That's none of your concern." "Actually," I said, sliding a folder onto the table, "it's very much my concern. You see, your business partner contacted me. After Daniel exposed the transactions, they needed someone to handle the PR fallout. Guess who they hired? Their eyes widened. Ava looked like she might faint. That's right, I continued. I'm managing your company's crisis campaign. Every headline, every article, every interview goes through me. And I'll make sure the story that comes out is the truth. A heavy silence fell over the table. My father's hands clenched. My mother looked away. Ava whispered, "You can't do this." I leaned forward, my voice soft but steady. "You told me once that no one wanted a woman like me. That I was a mistake, an embarrassment. But guess what? The single mom you all laughed at is the only reason your company isn't destroyed right now." Ava's eyes filled with tears. My mother looked like she wanted to disappear. I stood up, smoothing my coat. "You don't have to thank me. I didn't do it for you. I did it for my son, so he'll know that no matter who tries to tear you down, you can always rise higher." Then I turned to leave. As I walked out, I heard my father's voice crack for the first time in my life. "Ellie, wait." I paused in the doorway, glancing back just long enough to say, "You don't get to call me that anymore. Not after everything." And with that, I left them there in silence, surrounded by everything they'd built on lies. A few days later, Daniel stopped by my office. He handed me a coffee and said, "So, I heard your campaign saved them." "Barely," I said, smiling faintly, "but they'll never admit it." He nodded. "You know, when I first met your family, I thought they had it all together. Turns out, you were the only one holding any of it up." That made me laugh, not because it was funny, but because it was true. Sometimes revenge doesn't need fire or fury. Sometimes it's the quiet satisfaction of knowing the people who once belittled you now depend on your strength to survive. As I left the office that evening, Mason ran up to me, his little arms wrapping around my legs. "Mom, guess what? I got the lead in the school play." I knelt to hug him tight. "That's amazing, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you." And for the first time in a long, long while, I realized something. It didn't matter if my family ever saw my worth, because I finally did. And that was the sweetest revenge of all.